Off to the cloud. So, good evening and welcome. As I said already, this is about paving the way for your students' futures. It is a teacher event, so hopefully most of you are teachers. If some of you are parents, great, not a problem. Today we are talking about diversity and inclusion. And as you can see from the slide, we've got some guest speakers from 4 different companies. Represented today, we've got HSBC, Fidelity, Co-op and IBM. And in a second, I will get them to introduce themselves and we'll meet them properly. However, for now, I can let you know the agenda, quick introductions. We're going to give you some stats around diversity and inclusion. We're going to look at those. And we've done some research on it as well. And we're going to get opinions. And also we'll start to have a little bit of a discussion about diversity and inclusion, what certain companies are doing about it, what we could do better, how schools feel about it as well, especially because we want to see things from a teacher point of view too. We're going to get an opportunity to hear from our employers and about what they're doing around diversity and inclusion and where their focus is. And remember, through all of this, it says there we've got a Q&A panel towards the end. Don't be shy. If you've got a question beforehand, you can ask it beforehand whenever you think is relevant. Don't worry about that. We've got a chat box, which you should be able to find on your screen. We also have a Q&A box. Put the questions in the Q&A box, please, so that we can see them and we can go through them and we can answer them. We may not answer it straight away, but we will get to it. And if there are too many, we might not be able to answer them all tonight, but we will get back to you. Please, your questions are valid. Like you guys would probably say to your students, you're going to get the most out of this session by interacting and asking questions. And there is no such thing as a silly question. So do ask, do interact, do get involved. That's what's going to make this session worthwhile. If any of you feel confident enough to raise your hand, unmute your microphone and speak, go for it. If not, not a problem. That's why the chat box is there. That's why the Q&A box is there. So let's get to who we are. We are Catherine and Max from Pathway CTM. I think it's quite obvious to see which one I am. I'm the outreach manager for Pathway CTM. What does that mean? Is that some of you I may have met because I run sessions in schools where you guys can book Pathway CTM to come into your school and deliver 1-hour sessions, whether it be around submitting a winning CV. This is for your students, obviously, or how to pass a one-to-one interview, how to pass an assessment center. Those are the sessions that we run. I'm the person who runs them. I'm the outreach manager. And then I do a lot of follow-up support with students. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of the follow-up and stuff. I have Catherine with me. Catherine, introduce yourself, please. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Catherine on the education team here at Pathway CTM, and I've probably spoken to most of you, if not all of you, about what we've got coming up events wise, and of course for students, teachers and parents. So yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate, we really appreciate you joining us after school when I'm sure you've been doing lots of virtual lessons today. So thanks guys for joining, and we hope you enjoy the hour.
I mean, that's a really important point, Catherine. We really do appreciate the fact that you guys are joining. We know that you care about your students' future, and we know that at this moment in time, things are probably a little bit more stressful than they normally are. There's a little bit more pressure than there normally is. And that's why we want to have these sessions to help you guys out and get the information to you that you need. I think Catherine is going to launch a poll, if I'm not wrong. And whilst Catherine launches that poll and you guys get a chance to answer the questions, there should be, I think, 3 questions on the poll. Let us know the answers to those questions. We're going to meet the representatives that we've got from 4 different companies here, and I'll introduce them one by one. First of all, let's start with Co-op, and I believe we've got Danny. Good evening, Danny. How are you?
Hi, yeah, good evening. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, Danny Matthews. I'm the apprenticeship and community recruitment lead for the Co-op, and essentially what that means is I'm responsible for all of the recruitment of around about 400 or 500 apprentices a year across 22 different apprenticeships that we've got within our business. Everything from funeral care to food, logistics, digital, property, procurement. I'm not going to list all 22 because that would be a boring webinar. But the other part of my role, and probably where I operate very much in the diversity inclusion space is my community resourcing work. So I do a lot of work out in communities across the whole of the UK to support individuals, young, old, and everything in between, into employment with the Co-op, and run lots of skills programs as well across the UK, primarily to support those who are furthest away from work into employment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danny, for that. In no particular order, I'm going to pick on Fidelity, and I believe it's Kim from Fidelity. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kim. I am the Early Careers Recruiting Lead at Fidelity. In my role, I'm responsible for the recruitment and attraction of individuals for a number of our different early careers programs. So I look after our apprenticeship recruiting, but also look after our internship, graduate, and some of our PhD hiring as well. I'm really excited to be here this evening to talk to you a little bit about us as a company, and also what we've been doing in the D&I space. From my perspective, apprenticeships are a really key talent pipeline for us within our business. And I've been in the business for around 7 months now, but I have met 3 people who started as apprentices and have been at the business for 10 years now. So definitely a great way to start and develop your career with us at Fidelity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Kim. And then let's have a look. IBM. Kelly, I believe, is from IBM. Good evening.
Hi, Max. Thank you. Also, hi to everyone watching. So my name's Kelly Markwick. I work for IBM. My role within IBM is within talent marketing. So my specific activity I do in the UK is anything to do with promoting our early professional programs and attracting students to actually apply. So that can be our school leaver programs, apprenticeships, year-long gap years after sixth form or college, through to our university programs and graduate schemes. So I have been at IBM for 12 years. I didn't join on an apprenticeship, but an internship. But I do spend a lot of my time actually interviewing and assessing the young people that come into IBM, hoping to secure roles with us as well. So yeah, really looking forward to speaking with you all today.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then I think last but not least, we've got HSBC and it's Joe. Joe, good evening.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining today and taking this valuable time to come and join us this evening. I'm Jo Reynolds. I'm the Early Careers Operational Lead at HSBC, which basically involves I run all the programs from attraction, recruitment, D&I, but also the learner journey to make sure they have a great experience right through to graduation events at the end. And we run work experience, apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, mentoring, interns, grads, industrial placements, and more recently we've started doing careers education to support schools and parents to help the young people in this very uncertain time. So that's a little bit about me and HSBC. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So as you can see, we've got a lot of expertise on the panel tonight, and it's great that they've come along to share this with you. We all know, like we said, we've said it, we know that things are a little bit difficult and different at the moment, but you do have people who really know what they're talking about in front of you. So if you've got questions, ask those questions. But also, we're not just here to answer the questions that you've got, but we're also here to discuss certain things as well. And I know that the employers that have come this evening to the session, they want to hear from you guys as well. If there is anything that you think that they can improve on, do differently, so that we can get ideas and how to better support you. That's what we want to do in the end. Catherine, have we got the results of the poll? I can see almost everyone has filled it out.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm just going to end the poll now and I shall share the results. So the first question, which of any of the following groups do you work with in your school college? So let's see what came out top. So 91% females, and then next is 88% low income households. Then we have 78% BAME, 75% SEND, and 69% is LGBTQ+.
Fantastic. Okay.
Then number 2, sorry, Max.
Yeah, go for it.
And then we asked, do you believe COVID-19 has worsened inequalities amongst your students? And 91% of you have said yes, with 9% saying no. And then finally, why have you joined this event? So let's see what came out top. 44% have said to find out about opportunities for my students. Next up, 28% to learn more about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. 16% to learn about how I can access additional support during periods of remote learning. And then to find out about Pathway CTM and their program, 9%, and 3% to have my questions answered by experts.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Panelists, I hope you were paying attention and got all of that in. because we're going to cover all of this, aren't we? For sure. We're going to put to bed some of these worries or questions that we've got. Interesting to see that one about COVID-19 having worsened inequalities amongst students. Right, let's get to it. I think the next slide is supposed to say poll results are in, but I think I'm late on that one, aren't I? So let's get to it. When we talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, let's have a look at some of the areas that we consider. So we've got gender, BAME, SEND, religious beliefs, low-income households, LGBTQ+, personal interests, and of course, there are so many, many more. But these are all important things about the workplace now. And a lot of companies are trying to spend more time to understand about better diversity and inclusion in the workplace, because it's happening in schools, because we want to make it a better place and a more diverse workplace as well. And it's not only essential but productive to be inclusive of all social and economic backgrounds in the workplace. The reason why: diversity of background can often bring new ways of thinking and can impact positively on innovation and change. And the source we got there, that's the government website and government studies that have been done. I am going to ask actually all of you guys, we'll start with Danny from the co-op. Do you find that diversity of background does impact positively on the co-op?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's huge value to that diversity brings to many businesses, and you know, new ways of thinking is absolutely just one of those great values that having a diverse workforce and diverse thinking in that workforce can bring to an organization, and particularly now more than ever as well, having good representation and being inclusive of diverse talent is really important. If we think about the huge changes which are kind of coming in the next 10 years from an industry and a labour market point of view, probably more imminently around the impact of COVID in that huge change of landscape that we've all had to adapt to in the past year. So yeah, huge value from a diverse point of view.
Perfect, thank you, Danny. I'll ask HSBC as well. You rattled off earlier, Joe, a lot of the things and schemes that HSBC does for students that are great to know about. So I'm guessing this is quite important for you guys as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It very much is. And not just diversity from the disadvantaged groups, but people's personal experience, whether you're a graduate, whether you're a 50-year-old who's been made redundant, who's joining us, different interests. It really does bring diverse thought, creativity and openness, and that really makes us be successful. Also, having diversity represents the communities we serve as well, which is so important. But in respect to attracting new talent, we need role models from those diverse backgrounds in our organisation to be that social capital for young people, because they may not have them in their own communities. So we really want, you know, somebody from a Black ancestry, for instance, to say, look, I'm now such and such at HSBC, I got here, so can you. So it's really important to have those role models within the organisation as well.
Kelly, I can see you nodding in agreement.
Furiously nodding in agreement with Joe and Danny, definitely. And I think the piece around role modeling, especially, like we hear it all the time. Very specifically, we were speaking with apprentices from our BAME community, and just hearing their stories around, you know, they applied because other people from their community applied. They perhaps felt they were going against the grain of perhaps what their parents and families assumed they might go and do after they finished their studies. So I think to have those individuals that they see, whether at IBM or other companies, where they think, you know, this person's gone on and done this, and that I think made a real difference for their families as well, to be able to see that. And just like Joe said, you know, being able to represent our clients as well, because ultimately, you know, as we go through in the future, you know, we want to make sure our workforce represents the people that ultimately are using our products that we want to sell to and support.
Perfect. I suppose it's only fair to ask him as well.
I guess I can echo a lot of what everyone else has already said. So for us, I think diversity is kind of threefold within the business in terms of how it impacts us. So we think about our customers as a customer-centric organization. We feel like if we have the diverse mindsets, we'll be better equipped to meet the demands of our customer base as things continue to change. In terms of the business, it really helps us, as you've said, with innovation and thinking about things in a different way, challenging the status quo of things that we've always done and just seeing things from a different perspective. And also from people, I think it helps us individually as people within an organization to learn a lot more and to think about how we can be more receptive to those different individuals and how we can support them differently in the workplace. So a lot of what we talk about is not just recruiting those individuals into our organization, but what we can do to support them and to retain that talent within our organization. Sometimes we have individuals who do come from different backgrounds who need that additional support, and that's something that I think is something that's very important to us and that we're working towards as well.
Fantastic, and it's good to hear. And you can see that we've got four companies that are quite different, similar in certain ways, but very quite different companies that this is a big focus for them, and it is important. And remember, like we said, we want to have this as a discussion as well, and that's why we're here. And we need to have your opinions as well as teachers, and what concerns that you have around diversity and inclusion, and especially for your students. Let's look at some other facts about diversity and inclusion. We've talked about apprenticeships, and like it says here, whilst almost half of apprentices are women, there is a much greater proportion of male apprentices who are under 25. Women apprentices are much more likely to be older workers. And actually, I'm going to ask a question. I want you teachers to type in the chat box for me whether you find that you get more enthusiasm around apprenticeships from your male students or from your female students. Let us know in the chat box, please. That's an important one to note, that women apprentices are much more likely to be older workers. Apprenticeships aren't just for those that leave in school or for young people starting their career. They're great value even later stage and later career. And one of the guys mentioned it about having older people coming in. You've got different experiences, but it's a great opportunity to change career or to learn a new skill. We've got a couple of answers. Some of them are saying that males are more enthusiastic and males are proactive, unfortunately. Some of you have said both, equal interest, but less female opportunities. That's an interesting one. And then we can start to talk about female opportunities, and we'll find out from the four companies represented tonight whether there is something that they do more to balance that out. Most people find it's an even split, but career pathways seem to be very different and very traditional in their choices. No difference, but we are aware that females don't have the confidence sometimes. Okay, interesting things to consider, and maybe we can answer a few of those questions that we've got in there. So also, apprenticeships are a great point of entry for SEND students, SEND students into the workplace, with roughly 11% of apprentices having a learning disability and or difficulty. I won't ask every single one of you, but IBM, Kelly, do you find that this rings true?
Yeah, so we don't, I don't know if this is true of other employers, we don't actively ask it as a question. Students obviously can tell us if they want to, but it's no pressure to. Like thinking about it internally, once you're in the organisation, there's a lot of support, and we have a lot of kind of community set up specifically for all areas of diversity and inclusion. We also, at the point of applying and throughout the process, we are very open with students, and we always say to them, like, anything you need in terms of, do we need to adapt the online tests, or, you know, if this was face-to-face still, do we need to adapt the assessment centre when you come? So we always kind of put it the onus on the student, I suppose, in terms of them feeling comfortable telling us what they need from us, but there's always been that support there for them.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's have a look as well. So we've got the fact that BAME workers face lower employment rates, and unemployment rates are twice as high for BAME workers than white workers. That is obviously something that needs to be considered and worked on. We are going to hear a little bit later on from all four representatives. For those teachers that have questions around that as well, think about them, and let's bring them out when the guys start to talk a little bit later on, because it's important to cover that area. One of the things that we want to talk about as well is we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Yes, we're all in lockdown. This is having an effect. The question at the beginning in the poll, one of the questions, has this increased inequalities in opportunity? 91% have said yes. And when we look at this, 33% of state school teachers claim that under 75% of their students have adequate access to remote learning. And in light of the pandemic, however, 42% of employers said they would not consider missed time from education in future hiring processes, and there are still lots of opportunities for your students. Catherine, we've got a little poll to launch, haven't we?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just launching another poll. Interesting to see about regarding IT equipment.
Have a look at that poll. Please answer that. And I do want to ask, I am going to ask actually all of the companies that we've got here. It's a difficult one because as somebody who goes into schools to speak to students, one of the big concerns that students do have, and teachers as well, is this fact of the missing out on education time at the moment because of the pandemic. Students also are worried about the fact that they might not be able to do exams, whether they're going to be doing mini exams or it's all on predicted grades. But if I can start with Kim from Fidelity. That last sentence, in light of the pandemic, 42% of employers said they would not consider missed time for education in the future hiring processes. What is Fidelity's stance on that? How are you guys looking at it? What is your opinion or concern about those year 13s now when you go to hire them?
Yeah, so it's actually something that I've been talking about quite a lot this week. And yes, while we're thinking immediately about the year 13 students, we are also aware that the pandemic is going to impact people right the way through their educational careers, not just those who are sitting public or supposed to be sitting public examinations this year. So in terms of what we've been thinking about is we have been thinking about how we can adjust the grade requirements that we've previously had on some of our roles. And also we are taking into consideration that we may need to support students with numeracy and literacy and in order to be successful with the roles that we have. It's not a problem to us. We definitely still have those opportunities. And like Kelly was mentioning, we're very open in terms of like what our recruitment processes look like and how we can support students through that. We are continuing to run virtual events so that we give students that information about what they can expect. But you know, we know that the situation is completely out of our hands, so we are going to do whatever we can do to support students regardless when they're coming through our application process.
Fantastic. Kelly, I did see you again nodding furiously. Is that the same for IBM?
Yeah, definitely. Like Kim said, I think obviously we're all in, you know, a global pandemic. Everyone's in the same boat in terms of us all being very aware that 2020, 2021 does not look normal in terms of, you know, we're not expecting students to have, we are expecting gaps, and we're expecting it to look different to if they were coming to us, you know, pre-2020. So there's no kind of no expectation on our side that we would expect students to have continued exactly as they had before. I think interesting point that Kim made around like the grade kind of requirements, I have to admit, is something that I need to find out more about internally. I know all those discussions go on, perhaps just not ones I'm part of yet, from an attraction point of view, but I think exactly the same. They'll be reviewed in the same way, and we'll, you know, make allowances, I think is probably the kind of the main summary for that. And as I said, you know, I appreciate all students are different because of the ability to have access to perhaps the tools and technology they need for the remote learning, but in terms of being able to apply to a company or join us eventually, that will make no difference to us, kind of what they were able to do during the pandemic.
Interesting. And Joe from HSBC?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, we always had taken into account mitigating circumstances when it came to grades anyway, but obviously this isn't just a few students. This could potentially affect hundreds of students, if not thousands of students. So we've always given dispensation on grades anyway. I have to say, one of our apprenticeship programs, it is 5 GCSEs, but we're only currently asking for maths and English to be grade 4 or above anyway. So that gives people more opportunity. But also we are looking into internally at other programs. And I know there's a question coming in from a Peru. We are looking to have other apprenticeship programs or entry point programs that don't need any GCSEs at all, because we are aware that some people just aren't academic. People have got learning difficulties, missed education because they're a looked after child, whatever it may be, but will be brilliant at doing the jobs that we need them to do. So we're constantly looking at how we can help people into the world of work.
Interesting. And lastly, Danny?
Yeah, I think that, you know, lots been covered. I see this, you know, it's clearly a huge issue that I think everyone's got a responsibility on, not just employers and for certain, not just schools. Personal view, I think this is a real opportunity for us to look at grades and why we ask for grades, and how genuinely how much grades correlate with success in roles. And we've been doing quite a lot of work in the background recently with our learning providers to really challenge them on, you know, why have you asked for certain grades within their programs, which in some cases actually are higher than what the standard expect. So there's a real push from us on that space. I think there's another bit as well around, and someone's put something in the chat around, you know, employers supporting where they can with technology, and I would 100% agree with that. Not every business has enough resources and capital to be able to buy, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of devices, but where possible, I do believe that businesses can, and it's something that we've been doing quite a lot with, particularly within the schools that we have within our Academies Trust, and working with our supply chain to secure devices for schools across the UK as well. So yeah, it's a huge issue. I don't think anyone's got the answers to digital inclusion yet, but something I think we collaboratively need to work through to get the answers in as quick time as possible.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely. Sorry, HSBC have been doing the same, looking at laptops that have been sat in offices that they can give away, but also new kit as well to schools. And also we're working with charities to try and get those from disadvantaged background the tech, so they can even do schoolwork at home, let alone apply for jobs or attend events such as this. So we're doing a lot of work on that. Also with the careers education that we're doing, we're happy to post out a fact sheet on each of the workshops we're delivering, so that they don't have to have access to tech to get the information that they need.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear. And I suppose those are the things that we want to hear, and especially the teachers want to hear, because I previously worked in apprentice recruitment for a different company before I joined Pathway CTM. So I have recruited young people from after GCSE and after A-level into a company. And the company I worked for didn't require any grades because of the type of work that they did. Grades were irrelevant. And like Danny said, is there a correlation between those grades and that we asked for and somebody's performance in the workplace? These are things that are being looked at. And what I want, please don't take this the wrong way, but I do want teachers to understand that it's better to ask the question, because you will find that there are more companies out there than you realize, and more courses out there than you realize that don't really require high grades, and there will be more scope for mitigating circumstances, if we want to call it that. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. Obviously, you will always see the main ones will ask for certain grades, but do ask the question and get your students to ask the question as well, because it's not just about grades, it's also about the person, about what they do, about their behaviors. And there's so many different things that are taken into consideration. And we want you to keep asking those questions, but also to keep making a fuss about it, because as we've heard, it is starting to be looked at. The more it's made a fuss of, the more it will be looked at and potentially changed for the future if the current system doesn't work. What does the poll say, Catherine, that we launched?
Yeah, so we asked, let me just end that poll. So has access to IT equipment been a barrier to remote learning for your students? And 52% of you have said yes, 36% have said somewhat, and then 12% have said no.
That's a lot of, that's quite a big barrier. That's quite a big thing, really, isn't it? It's difficult. And I know that there are companies out there that are doing, like we've heard, HSBC Co-op, thinking about technology, and perhaps IBM and Fidelity are doing the same, but there are other companies as well trying to do the same to get resources to students and out there. Somebody has asked a question, and I don't know if this is fair to throw in now. Let me just find it. Okay, it's more of a comment than a question. This is what students are really missing is the opportunity to do volunteering / work experience and other activities which give them employment skills. And students will still get their exam qualifications, but it's that's being missed out. Is there anything that can be done or is being done by any of you guys, or is this something that you guys can think about going forward? I know it's difficult. We're in a lockdown. We can't really meet physically, but is there anything that is happening?
Yes, absolutely there is. So We do work experience every year for year 10 to year 13 students. Obviously, last summer we did have to cancel the physical work experience, and some bright spark had the idea of doing it virtually, which my team hated me for initially. So we put together a program to deliver virtually, and it went so well. We've now created a suite of workshops on employability skills, transferable skills, selection processes, you name it, well-being, coping and working from home, and those have gone absolute nationally, and we've had almost 40,000 students join those over the last 6 months. This year we were hoping to do it physical this next summer, but as time goes on, it looks like it may be a virtual event, but we've actually built a great timetable of virtual stuff that we can do, and we're hoping as many people can join as possible.
Fantastic. Perfect. Thank you for that. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's not just teachers and it's not just parents that want the information, students as well. And let's have a look. So we've got the Social Mobility Foundation put an index together, and it's called the Social Mobility Employer Index. It's there. We've got the top 75 companies, and this is one of the places where students can go to assess diversity and inclusion within companies, because we know that students are starting to make decisions around companies according to their principles, according to their morals, according to what they do, and whether what they say and what they do matches up, and what opportunities it's going to give them. Somebody has asked, can you please share links for virtual worlds? If it's possible, we can. Also, these pieces of information that we're supplying you with tonight, we've got the sources for it, and at the end there is a slide with them, but I believe Catherine should be able to put them in the chat box afterwards for those of you that want to take the sources away. Otherwise, you can email us, student@pathwayctm.com, and just let us know that you want the links from the session today, and we can supply them to you later on. We've had that question about virtual work experience, about other skills, employability skills, and we've heard about workshops that happen. Let's talk a little bit about what Pathway CTM does and what we're doing to help teachers and schools in this current situation. I explained earlier, I'm the outreach manager, so I do a lot of virtual sessions at the moment, and it looks like we're going to continue virtually in the future as well, because it allows us to reach more schools on a day than it would if I had to visit around each one individually, and it takes less time away from teachers themselves. We have our student portal, and that's for all of your students to get onto and to look at our 9 modules that they can go through and learn. There's videos on there, there's resources on there. Some of the employers that are on here today appear on those videos. The resources that they have appear on our portal as well, because we've worked with them to make sure the information we get to students is valid. That's part of our online learning system. The outreach sessions I do are all virtual, and that would be you teachers that would book them for your class up to a certain number of students that you want me to come in and talk about CVs, or it could be about how to pass assessment centres, and it could be about how to create an action plan to find out where to go, and that could be looking at different apprentice opportunities, different university pathways. And again, like I said, on all of these things, we've worked with a lot of the different companies that we've worked with to put these resources together. Again, we have live events and workshops like we're doing for you teachers this evening. We do them for your students as well, and we spend a lot of time doing them for your students. A little bit later on, I'm going to put up a slide of events that we've got coming up. And I believe we've got events coming up with all of the companies that we've got here today. So you'll see those, and we invite students to them where they can interact directly with employers and they can get more information, get more confident about the processes. On our website as well, we have templates and guides that you can use. This is all free to all of your students across the UK. We don't charge for it because we know that it's important. One of the reasons why we do it is because we want students who potentially don't go to a great school that's fee paying, that has every opportunity and all the greatest pieces of tech equipment available to them. We want to try and help those that are disadvantaged get the same opportunity and the same support. We know that not every student is able to have parents behind them to give them the most amount of support and encouragement. So we want to be able to help do that if they're missing that at home, because through no fault of their own, so that they can succeed. That's what we do, and that's what we try to do moving forward. So now we've spoken about it. I'm going to get Catherine to launch a poll on our screen. It's the last poll that we've got, and it's just to hear from you guys as teachers, whether you're concerned about a specific year, all of your years of the 3 that we're asking about, or only some of them. And we're going to hear a little bit about diversity and inclusion from each of the representatives from the company and what they're doing to support it in their company. I'll start with Joe from HSBC. what are you doing to support diversity?
What are we doing? And to be honest, we always have done, but we've still got a long way to go. Let's be honest, I don't think any company out there is absolutely perfect at this, but we actually do quite a lot. We do targeted attraction to schools with a high representative of BAME, or female only schools, or schools in areas of high deprivation. We also work with charities who work with specific disadvantaged groups, and for disadvantaged groups, we offer sessions talking to them about the selection process, interview practice, assessment centre practice, whatever it may be. We give them those role models from within the business to inspire them. So we really do try to level the playing field to give everybody that same opportunity to apply in the first place. We constantly look at our selection processes to make sure that the same percentage that apply do come right through that pipeline, but not only into jobs, but right through up to the executive committee. So we're constantly working on things like that. Internally, we do have what we call employer resource groups, and there's basically one for each disadvantaged group, where we all get together, discuss ideas, do promotion of HSBC and how inclusive we are. We also look at how we can support colleagues when they come into the business who may have a learning difficulty or a disability, and make those reasonable adjustments. They're a carer, so they can work at home or whatever it may be. So we are really trying, but we're constantly speaking to different people, different organisations, schools, people from those disadvantaged groups themselves, to ask, what do you want from companies? What do you need to take that stepping stone in your career? So yeah, we've always focused on it, but we are looking to do that more and more, because, as I say, a diverse workforce makes a diverse force.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Joe. Remember, teachers, we've had a lot of interaction so far, which is great from you guys, and we want to keep hearing from you. Questions, put them in the Q&A box so we can see them and answer them as we go along. You've heard from a lot of the employers already. You hear what they know and what they can talk about. Please ask them the questions that you want to know the answers to. Danny, Co-op, what are you guys doing to support diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably similar to what Joe shared already, in terms of some of the kind of the external and the internal pieces. I think I just want to pull on three kind of key areas that we're focused on. So before I jump into those three, I think it's important to call out that the whole cooperative movement is all about diversity and supportive of including communities and that wider inclusion agenda, wherever that might be, not just in the UK either. And underpinning that is kind of three key principles that we have within our organisation, over and above the more kind of tangible elements of around processes, technology, networks, and reasonable adjustments. One is government change. So we've got a real key agenda at the moment around supporting some really big movements, and probably the biggest one at the moment is free school meals. That agenda, we're a leading kind of partner with the Marcus Rashford movement in lobbying government in that space. We invest probably £500,000 a year into community insight and data, which gives us some really good statistics to help us identify where we need to support communities who need it most, and importantly, where are those communities who need it most. And that helps shape our, not just our kind of people aspects, so where we can support with job opportunities, Kickstart program being another, but also as a business where we need to ensure that we have the right infrastructure, the number of stores, what products that we need to sell to the customer base to make it representative of those customers who are shopping in those stores. So lobbying change is a key element, and investment in insight is also another. I think enabling access to opportunities is really key as well. So looking at apprenticeships, wider programs as well. So community resourcing programs, which support everyone from all different backgrounds, to be honest, young, old, ex-offenders, people with learning difficulties and more severe disabilities as well. is just to name a few of the different types of programs that we run across Co-op, and they are ultimately employability programs to support those furthest away from work into work across our business. And then the third one is probably the one that we're earliest in our journey on, around raising aspiration and careers education. So one of the pieces of work that's on my pad at the moment is we're developing a careers program for year 7 through to 13, with the idea that we want to expand that into primary schools, which is all about raising aspiration and developing that kind of sense of cooperation for particularly young people. And that is with a real focus around disadvantaged areas. I think that call out, there was a comment in the chat, which I don't think we've picked up, around young white working class boys. That is clearly an area that seems to have dropped off the radar for a lot of people. And actually the statistics now show that they are, as a group, the furthest away from the workplace, which is something that we need to be mindful of. And that career strategy is all about supporting that group, BAME, and the wider youth agenda as well. So lobbying change, enabling access to opportunities at the Co-op in lots of different routes, which Joe's already talked about as well, and raising aspirations through education is kind of our next phase of our work. But I mean, there's loads. I could talk all night about inclusion at the Co-op, but we've all got food to eat, and Kim and Kelly need a chance as well.
Thank you very much for identifying that, Danny. That's great to hear as well. Kim, Fidelity.
So I guess a lot of what has already been said is similar to kind of what we are doing. I guess internally, one of the things that we talk about quite a lot, and we have very active groups, are our employee resource groups, similar to what Joe mentioned. So we have 5 employee resource groups, and within those groups, we are looking to not only educate the business internally, but also think about how we do outreach and how we encourage and attract more people from those backgrounds to apply to work within Fidelity. One of the things that we have also thought about was when we were developing our recruitment strategy, both I guess across apprenticeship side of things, but also our like intern and grad and across our early career strategy, we were really mindful of the and intentional about the organizations that we are partnered with. And one of the reasons why we joined Pathways was because of the type of work that they were doing and also the student population that they were working with. And that was something that was very important to us as a team. We wanted to know that not only what we were doing, but also what our partners were doing was contributing to racial and social equity across the UK. So yes, we work with a number of organizations that help us in terms of our targeted attraction, and also for us to get into schools a little bit more to talk to students about the opportunities. But for us, it's not always just about understanding what Fidelity is and what Fidelity does. For us, it's also about education. It's giving people those opportunities to see what they could do, and even if they decide it's something that they don't want to do and they never want to see again, at least they've made that decision. So we try to ensure that we give as many opportunities as we can for people to interact with us. I think Joe touched on this as well, which was around looking at recruitment processes. So we can't talk about people being within an organization unless we are going to assess what the barriers to entry are. So it's something that I'm working through at the moment and that we continue to revisit, is where might there be barriers to entry in our recruitment process for people from these underrepresented minority groups within our workplace. So we're doing a lot of work there in terms of how we shift and change things. And I know that I talked about us dropping A-level grade requirements, but that was something that was that we had in the business. And I know that a lot of people moved away from it beforehand, but it's something that we've worked towards, and we're thinking now about how we can better support people from backgrounds where they do not have the previously required educational requirements. So for us, I think what we are trying to do, and it is only early days, I think, for us and for many other organizations, is just to be a lot more open in terms of the communication that we are having within the organization. And I think we are doing a lot of work with our managers, but also anybody who's going out to meet students at a campus event or at a school, to think about how they can create empathy and how they can really understand and think about focusing on the behaviors and the languages that they use to ensure that people are feeling included when they interact and engage with us.
Brilliant, that's good. There's a lot of information coming through here. guys, and it's really important information as well, and it's good to hear. Kelly from IBM, last but not least.
Yeah, I mean, how can I follow that?
I know, right?
Amazing things that everyone else is doing. I would say a lot of what IBM doing, very much echoing what Joe and Kim were talking around. And I think for IBM, you know, we have a slightly different phrase for it, but essentially those employee resource groups, exactly the same in IBM. I think the majority of very large companies particularly have those groups in that support network. And I think, though historically, I think within IBM, those groups have been really key, that when you're in the company already, they provide you support and mentorship and opportunity and like-minded community. And I think possibly only more recently, we've really started to, like, I suppose, give those people a voice. So the people in the communities who are identifying as women, BAME, people with diverse abilities, whichever groups, but actually, you know, getting them on board to be our voices for attraction campaigns. So being very strategic as much as we can around, you know, perhaps when we work with yourselves at Pathways and we know, for example, that a very high proportion of your audience are going to be from, let's say, a Black background, then we really want to make sure that when we're role modeling, that we are choosing IBMers who are representing. And I think also letting them be really honest about their experiences and, like, you know, not shying away from perhaps experiences they've had when they were job hunting, you know, and perhaps maybe what they were perhaps fearful of, or I know I mentioned it earlier, but perhaps being really honest with the students they're speaking to about, you know, how their families or their communities felt when they announced that they were going to be doing an apprenticeship or looking at apprenticeships, and letting them tell those very honest stories. And yeah, we've had so many hires that have come in who said to us, you know, I applied because I met XYZ and he or she kind of gave me that confidence to do it, and not only talked about, you know, the opportunities at IBM and all the benefits, but actually told their real story, and I felt like I related to that person. So yeah, can't really add much more, like not any better things than the others have already said, but just like everyone else, like it's something so high on all companies' agendas, like definitely from a recruitment and attraction point of view, but way to the top, you know. And I think it sounds like the majority of us here, we all work in the early careers space, but I have colleagues working in the executive space and the, you know, the very senior members of staff, and they have exactly the same priorities. They also want to make sure that they are representing, and actually I think it's that as well. It's, you know, it's us doing our work at our end of getting, you know, the new hires in, the first careers, but actually it's role modeling at a higher level as well. And we want to make sure people can see, you know, senior people or the CEOs representing as well, not just the junior members of staff.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so thank you for that. And we did launch a little poll, and actually it's going to tie in nicely because I'm just looking at my watch and thinking time-wise, we're going to hit questions now. We've had questions as we go along. We've had a lot of information as we go along. And what's great to see is that I can see there's conversations happening in the chat box, and we'll pick up if there's anything important in there. And I can see there's been a few recommendations going back and forth in there, which is great. So with that, we asked, which years are you most concerned about? Is it year 11, year 12, or year 13? And the answers come back overwhelmingly. 66% are concerned about year 13, 56% about year 11, 56% about year 11, and 38% about year 12. So obviously year 11 and year 13, they're those destination years. Somebody has asked it, and I'm just going to ask for a quick round robin, because where intakes happen and where the windows for applications for 2021 has happened may have already closed, but somebody has asked that their girls are interested in a degree apprenticeship and especially IT. When are the roles open for each company, especially IBM as a tech firm? But all of you, do you guys have roles that are opening up soon, or are we now having to start to look at 2022? Let's start with Kim from Fidelity.
So for us, we're actually just opening our roles around now. So at the moment, we have opportunities advertised for our operations and client services, and we will have technology roles available also. For us, our roles are typically levels 3 or level 4, and we take students typically from the age of 18 into those roles, so 18 upwards. The programs last around 2 years, and the majority of our roles are based out of our Surrey office, which is in Kingswood. But yeah, our roles are open now. They'll be open until the end of March, with the view that we will run any assessment activities in April time.
Fantastic. And Joe, HSBC?
Oh, if I'm on mute. First time this evening, that's not too bad.
All right, it's good, going.
It's been a bit of a higgledy-piggledy year this year, so we're not actually in line with what we usually are. So yes, we do have opportunities that are yet to come. We are currently open for our work experience program for this summer, and that closes on the 21st of February. We're also currently live for level 3, level 4 and level 6 apprenticeships in compliance and risk and business analysts. And our main recruitment window for the level 3s and financial services degree apprentices will be National Apprenticeship Week, which is the 8th of February.
Brilliant, fantastic. And Kelly, IBM?
Yeah, so same as Joe. So we haven't opened ours yet, but we are opening again on Monday, the 8th of Feb, in line with National Apprenticeship Week. And for us, that'll be our 2 degree apprenticeships. We have a technical version and a business version. And then we have our level 3 and level 4 apprenticeships. So what that means for us is, you know, like year 13s who are looking at being able to join an organisation this year, they can be applying from the 8th of Feb, and then the view is that they will join us generally autumn, winter 2021. And then for any students who are perhaps year 12, even year 11, year 10, who are, you know, just curious, on our website, anyone can register their interest for future information. So we ask them kind of, when do you finish your studies, so they can let us know. And then, yeah, and I'd say, well, this has happened to us the last couple of years. Generally, our apprenticeships do seem to open this time of year, so kind of Jan, Feb, March time, as opposed to perhaps for a lot of us, our graduate and student uni programs, like typically that classic autumn term, kind of September, October. But I think it's really nice actually that from an apprenticeship point of view, we do try our best to keep it in line with things like UCAS deadlines, National Apprenticeship Week, kind of times where students possibly are thinking a bit more about, you know, their next step, and not kind of trying to get them too early in the academic year. Brilliant.
Danny?
Yeah, roles advertised term 1, term 2, typically, although we do run throughout the year. We'll jump on the National Apprenticeship Week bandwagon as well. So we do have some roles going out. Solicitor apprenticeships level 7 going out. National Apprenticeship Week. There's a couple of level 5 digital apprenticeships as well. And they're spread out throughout the UK. Yeah, but again, similar to IBM, there's a platform where you can register your interest to keep abreast of any opportunities which launch throughout the year.
Fantastic. Okay, that's good to hear from all of you. So there are a couple of questions, and I think a couple of things that we want to cover off. And you guys, if you disagree with me or think that information is slightly different, let me know. But when we're talking about apprenticeships or pathways into the future, anybody can start at a lower level apprenticeship. We call it lower level, like a level 2 apprenticeship, and can still work their way up to get a degree, because doing a degree apprenticeship, it is a degree exactly the same as it would be a degree from a university. There is no longer a similar to or equivalent of. It is a degree. For example, the company I used to work for before, we offered a BA in business management, and you could finish your GCSEs, join that company, work your way up. It would take 7 years, but by the end of it, you would have a BA in business management, but you'd have started at 16 and finished 7 years later and gone through all the levels. There are companies out there that will, like other representatives have said, that will look at taking on students that have maybe 2 GCSEs. There are also companies that take on people onto an apprenticeship that don't have any GCSEs, and then they would work in the first year of that apprenticeship to make sure that they can get the correct GCSE in maths and English, and they would work with their their training provider, to make sure that the students have that. So please don't let that be a barrier to what your students can do or what you're offering them, because not every institution is asking for grades. And there are a lot of companies, this is really important for companies to get young people into them, because they need a pipeline. So they're not going to stop it happening. And like that question earlier about the time out of education at the moment, companies are not going to suddenly start to stop hiring people, because they still need people to join them, as do universities. Companies will do everything they can to take on the right people, and then if they need help with getting those particular grades, they will work with them in the first year using the training provider to do that. Which then goes back to a question, and I think I've still got it in the chat box, because it's probably an important one to cover. And it was about what two things could be on a CV, could somebody have on a CV if they don't have any grades or any GCSEs? What two things could they have done or have that makes them stand out? I'm going to ask Danny from the co-op because he's the first one on my screen. Did that question make sense, A?
Yes. Two things, got to try and drill them down. I think for me, it's about showcasing your personality as much as you can on paper. I think the one thing I would call out is a lot of people who recruit for apprenticeships, without speaking on behalf of the panelists here, wouldn't be looking at a CV, because what are you looking for? You're not looking for experience almost. So yeah, I mean, to turn that into application, I would probably say, yeah, bring your personality out in your application where you can, and show that you've thought through that this is the right opportunity for you. And from a career and a next step point of view, I'm mindful that it's difficult to make that kind of decision at year 11 or year 13 or even earlier. But I think showcasing that to an employer is really, really key. That it's not the for an apprenticeship point of view, it's not the second option to university. Actually, this is the one that you want, and bringing that personality out there. But I would call out the apprenticeship stance usually for employers that they wouldn't use CVs, because it's a little bit of a pointless exercise looking at someone's work experience when the whole point of an apprenticeship is to give someone that experience.
Yeah. Max, do you mind if I jump on the back of that, just in case I forget what I was going to say? Yeah, completely agree with Danny. I think a tip really for all your students is to firstly, I suppose, work out what an employer requires them to submit, because like Danny said, like at IBM, we use application forms. We don't ask for CVs or cover letters. And with an application form, and again, hope not speaking on behalf of all the employers if this is different to what you guys do, but I think the vast majority of us, we look at competencies, transferable skills, whatever term you want to call it. And for us at IBM, it would be things like, when has that student worked in a team? When has he or she solved a problem? When have they adapted? And I think just going back to something I think I saw in one of the chats was around what work experience and what activities are students able to do during the pandemic. And I think for us, at least, I would say, please don't worry. Please, I hope no students worry that they have to be doing some very formal work experience to get into companies. Things like, as long as it's COVID safe, being able to show that you've helped your elderly neighbour with their groceries is a great example of, like teamwork and kind of communication. And it doesn't have to be anything kind of a business related. I think, even in these times, if there are things that students can find that they can do, doesn't have to be a physical thing, but to just showcase those types of competencies. And I think certainly from an IBM perspective, we're very transparent about what competencies we look for. They're plastered all over our website. We talk about them a lot at events. And I think for students, it's just for them to be able to, articulate to us, when have they done these things before? And we're not looking for incredible examples. We appreciate the age the students are, perhaps the experiences they might have had. So it's really them thinking in depth about, what does this example that I did show about me? So that's what we're really looking for. Perfect. Over and above grades, for sure.
Perfect. I'm going to say, I know it's 5:29 and this should go till 5:30. We may run a minute or two over. I believe, Kelly, you need to run, and that's absolutely fine if you do need to go.
Yes, up, yes.
That doesn't mean that others aren't desperate to get away to dinner and to spending time with their family. So we'll keep it short and sweet for now. There have been a lot of questions that have come in. Some of these questions, I can take them away. And also, if you've got them, you can email us at student@pathwayctm.com, because there's some really interesting things around qualifications that different companies look for. A lot of this information will always be on companies' websites, especially. I know that we've talked a lot about apprenticeships tonight. Don't know how it specifically got that way, but it is great to talk about it, because we are starting to see that the companies that we work with, and a lot of companies are starting to open up the way they recruit, and they have been doing it for a long time now. And provides a lot more opportunity to a lot of people. What Kelly said there, and Danny as well previously, about what is looked for on a CV, or rather an application form from young people. I used to be an early careers recruiter as well, and absolutely right. I'm not too worried about work experience, because I don't expect somebody 16 or 18 years old to have a lot of experience in that job, or any experience in that job. It is more about those transferable skills. Somebody's asked a question, can you give an example of anything that you saw that stands out on a CV, or that really brings things to light? I would always say it's about what those students do. And so I had a student who came and applied for a job, and he'd been a carer for his mum ever since he was, I think he was 6 years old. Really, it's ridiculous, but he'd been a carer for his mum for so many years. And he was like, well, I didn't do a lot of sports at school because I had to care for my mum. I couldn't get a part-time job because I had to care for my mum. Everything he did related back to caring for his mum. That really showed a lot of things, because it shows that obviously he's got dedication and commitment to such a serious thing as well, as to having to care. Normally it should be the parent caring for the child, but he found himself having to care for his mum. That shows a lot of responsibility, a lot of maturity as well, and an ability to have grown up quickly, which isn't always great, but it does show a lot of traits. Think outside the box with these things. Companies are looking at a lot of different things about young people, so don't put boxes around these things. Let them do the research. Come talk to us. We are the conduit that then goes to the companies, and we'll find out for them, and we'll help them get in there and get the information from the companies to the students as well. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. There is a link in the box that Catherine has put, and it's a type form link that we need you to fill out. It's a little survey for the teachers to fill out. We have gone over by 2 minutes. I will ask if there is anybody who has anything, any last minute thing that they would like to add before we finish. And if there is nothing, that is absolutely fine. I think everybody wants to get on and go for dinner. The slide has been up. These are the events that we've got coming up in the future. And these are events for students. Parents can attend as well. Obviously, teachers can as well. Get these back to your students. We'll be sending these around as well. We've got a virtual interactive session with IBM. That's on Tuesday, the 26th of January. These are all free. We never charge for any of these. We've got an insight event with Accenture next Wednesday, again at 6 o'clock, so it's after school. That's Wednesday, 27th of January. PwC, we've got a Southeast event. That's it for any student interested in accounting. And be wary of that one as well, because even PwC, they do a lot of different things to get people onto their accountancy courses. Even if they don't have the right grades, they do a lot of work with them. So again, don't let grades be a factor. That's Thursday. We've got diversity and inclusion. We've got a parent event. So if you want your students to let their parents know, or you want to tell the parents, it's going to be the same panelists, IBM, HSBC, Co-op. That's next Thursday, because parent events are always the 4th Thursday of every month. We've got an interactive session with HSBC. That's around assessment centre preparation. And that's on Tuesday, the 2nd of February, 5 o'clock. Lastly, we've got an insight event with the Co-op, Wednesday, the 10th of February at 6 p.m. That's all. Thank you very much to everybody that's come this evening, to all the teachers that have interacted and asked questions. And thank you mostly to the representatives from HSBC, from Fidelity, from Co-op. That's Danny, Kim, and Joe. Thank you very much, guys, for coming this evening and giving up your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope you guys, the teachers, have found it useful. Remember, don't be a stranger. Get in touch with us. Get involved. Ask us questions and we'll help you out. Everybody, enjoy your dinner and have a good evening. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're more than welcome.